Welcome to the Rational Optimist Podcast, your weekly dose of breakthroughs and insights that should be front page news. Today, we're talking about the sweetest word in the English language, deregulation. What can Elon Musk accomplish now that he's in charge of the newly created Department of Government Efficiency? I'm Dan Steinhardt. He's Stephen McBride. This is the Rational Optimist Podcast. The floor is yours, Stephen.
Well, so first of all, before I get into this very sensitive topic, I want to make sure that everyone knows we are non-political here at the Rational Optimist Society. This is not about red versus blue. It's not about Republican versus Democrat. This is about innovation. We champion innovation because it creates prosperity for all. It's how we solve the biggest problems in the world. And right now, or for the past 50 years, the number one thing holding us back and making us all poorer in all sorts of pernicious ways is the regulatory state. So we can show this chart on screen right now. You can see the total pages published in the Code of Federal Regulations. It's just absolutely ballooned over the past 70 years. Okay, and we'll get into it later in the show, but this has essentially made building stuff, innovating in large parts of the US economy completely illegal. So, as you said, Musk and former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, they're going to co-lead a newly created Department of Government Efficiency. Basically, the goal here, in Trump's words, is to pave the way for the administration to dismantle government bureaucracy, slash excess regulations, cut wasteful expenditures, and restructure federal agencies.
So the actual cut, there's two pieces of this, right? There's the actual cutting of money from the federal budget. I think Musk promised he'd do $2 million or $2 trillion, although he didn't say whether it's annually or over like the next 10 years. We'll see. That's needed and great, but it's the less exciting part to me. The reducing, cutting, eliminating burdensome regulations is really, really the difference maker here. So what's your take on this? Is this going to be like a Milei in Argentina situation where he truly takes a chainsaw to the government and just deletes entire agencies? Or are they going to be up against, they're up against the deep state essentially, so it's not going to be easy.
We need to get our friend David Galland on the podcast to actually describe what's going on in Argentina right now, because I hear Milei is just cutting all these government departments, and I know he's done certainly a lot of good, but I don't know actually what he's really got done. So look, it's not as simple as just saying you're fired and you're going to get people out the door, right? You are coming up against the regulatory state, against all these the alphabet soup of government agencies, and they have protections. They're in unions. You can't just fire them. I know they are trying to change certain parts of the administrative state to Section F, categorization of employees, which brings them under the president, which then makes them easier to fire. But this is going to take something monumental in order to overhaul something like the US government. And fire. I don't even think that's the right approach. I don't think you can go and fire large swaths of the government. I think you basically just have to make them, redundant and remove the red tape in some ways.
So let's start with the problem. I think there's probably a lot of skeptical people out there who hear deregulation and they think that's what caused the 2008 financial crisis. So why don't you give an example or two of ways that regulation has just been a brick wall for innovation?
Again, I'll just go back to what I said. It is making our lives worse and us poorer in all sorts of ways. So something that we all care about is housing, right? We all care about living in a nice home, for our kids to be able to buy a nice home. It takes longer to build a house than it did today in 1971. And that's not because we forgot to build houses or pouring concrete got more difficult. It's basically because we've created a maze of regulations that make it nearly impossible to build a home. So a city like San Francisco is the worst offender here. Just to get through the regulatory gauntlet is about $400,000 per apartment in San Francisco. It's like it's paying the cost of a normal sized house just in order to get the permission slip to build one. So that's one very specific way. I will point out that I think you hit the nail on the head. People hear deregulation, people hear some right-wing conspiracy, so corporations can make all this money and it hurts poor people. We care about the environment. I'm sure a lot of people do too. If you care about solving climate change, you should hate the bureaucratic state. So there's this great story about how one company was trying to build America's largest solar farm. I believe it was somewhere in the American West in Arizona. Would have provided enough power to power 500,000 US homes with clean energy. The project was blocked because it would have meant relocating 114 desert tortoises. And that's just one example of this craziness that goes on.
Elon's got his own stories about this with SpaceX. So I put this poor seal on the screen. So this you wonder if the government is just like trolling Elon and makes it worse for him, or they treat everybody this way. But anyway, before SpaceX was allowed to do a certain launch, the environmental regulators were very concerned that the loud noises of the rocket would distress the seals and interrupt their mating patterns or something. So they had to capture seals, put headphones on them, as you can see on your screen, and play sonic boom noises in their ears to see how they would react. And this is like, if this was just one egregious example, that would be one thing. But just the most recent news around this is Meta had planned to put a data center next to a nuclear power plant, because data centers suck awesome amounts of power. And it was blocked because there was a species of rare bee found there.
Just insane. Literally insane. And I mean, before we get into some more of these crazy ways that we're making ourselves poorer and shooting ourselves in the foot, it's just worth taking a step back. And why do we care about technology? Why do we care about innovation? I know Mark Andreessen has made the point that you basically have a triangle. It's like strong innovation leads to a strong economy and leads to a strong military. So you think about, why did America dominate the 20th century and win the Cold War against the Soviets? It was essentially because it out-innovated them. And it was able to just create massive amounts of wealth and a strong military through having the best technology. And right now, in all these different areas, we're really holding ourselves back. We're making it illegal to build and innovate in certain parts of the economy. Again, one other very relevant example to the military is drones. So China right now has the largest drone company on earth, DJI. And in fact, it sells thousands of drones to the US military. So right now, the US military is walking around with Chinese drones in their backpacks. And this was an American technology. Drones are an American technology. And yet, over the past couple of decades, the FAA, the overlords of America's skies, has essentially made it really difficult to launch drones. It has rules like you can't launch a drone beyond the line of sight, which essentially means a human has to look at the drone always and have it in be able to see it. Just silly. We're now walking those rules back. That's great, and giving exemptions, but just things like this is the reason why. Is the reason why we have a lot of these problems. The
China example is interesting because I think one of the things that sounds smart about the relationship between China and the U.S. is that China's able to accomplish things. So they've got more high-speed rail in their country than the entire rest of the world combined, and they completed it quickly. And the story is that it's an authoritarian government, and so they're able to focus their resources and just like get things done that a more decentralized society like the U.S. cannot, which kind of sounds like it makes sense. I mean, it's not how it's ever worked historically, but it kind of sounds like it makes sense. But then you think about like why we haven't been able to get this stuff done in the U.S. There's a high-speed rail project in California that started in, was it 2008 now? And they've spent $15-some billion on it. No track yet. They've been doing environmental and whatever other reviews for 16 years now. That's why we don't. That's why we're behind China. It's not because they're some geniuses with focused resources. And you look, just to drive the point home and to show that this isn't political at all, the story about the Philadelphia bridge that collapsed last summer. So a tanker caught fire under the bridge, caused the bridge to collapse. Under the normal rules, it would have taken 2 to 5 years to rebuild the bridge. That's important, bridge on 995, which is one of the most important highways in the country and in the Northeast. Would have taken 2 to 5 years to rebuild the bridge. The governor, a Democrat, essentially shoved aside all the regulations, and they rebuilt it in 12 days. Right. So it's like, oh, we could just decide to be competent and efficient. We're in our own way. That's all it is.
The other, just completely agree. That's it. I know we'll get into Operation Warp Speed and the COVID example, but it's so politically charged that this is an even better example, because hey, it's like, we're going to build a bridge. The other thing that Philadelphia did, by far the most important thing, was temporarily removing all the environmental regulations that slow things down. The other thing they did is that they turned a boring bridge rebuild into something like a football match. They got the whole country rolled up, and they put it on the internet. Okay, they live streamed the I-95 rebuild on the internet. What happened is hundreds of thousands of people tuned in to track its progress. They were able to see a little progress bar. I was able to watch it even from Ireland. Local restaurants started delivering the food to construction workers. The local NASCAR track, they lent a jet dryer so builders could keep working when it was raining, and to dry the track. I know Elon has actually talked about doing something similar with the Department of Government Efficiency, which is essentially, we're going to go in, we're going to look at how all these three-letter agencies are wasting money, or the kind of bureaucracy that slows things down, surfacing more stories like the Seal story and the Rare B story, and we're going to put it on Twitter for everyone to see. And we're also going to have a leaderboard of the worst ways that they spend your money, or the worst ways that they block projects. And I think that will shine a lot of light on exactly what's going on, and maybe get some political will behind fixing all this madness.
The fact that we're even talking about this today is such a win. I mean, how much has the mood changed since 2 weeks ago?
Right. Huge. I mean, I know we're going to get into crypto and stuff, but you see it in the price of crypto. You see it in just the general mood. I read the book Reaganland a couple of years ago. It was essentially about Ronald Reagan, and a lot of people think Ronald Reagan was this big champion of deregulation, and he was. But in fact, when you look at what he was able to do and the amount of laws he kind of got off the books, the amount of regulations he scaled back, it was actually very little. It was really about talking about, I know this is going to sound crazy, but it was about vibes. It was about talking about deregulation, about talking about get the government off your back, and to some degree staffing the agencies with people that kind of, passed a blind eye to a lot of the rules. So there is a lot you can do.
It's very, very hard to cut a government budget, especially the U.S. federal government budget. And they say don't bet against Elon. He cut, for example, Twitter's workforce by 80%, and the company functions just fine. It wasn't doing great financially. I'm not sure about now, but it wasn't doing great financially. But that was more of a result of like advertisers boycotting it than any operational problems they had. So if anyone can do it, it's Elon. Let's just really quickly put the federal budget under the microscope. So put the chart on the screen of what the government actually spends money on. 2023, so Elon says he wants to cut $2 trillion. Again, not sure if that's in 1 year or over some longer period of time. If it's in 1 year, pretty much impossible. $6.1 trillion is what we spend. $4 trillion of it almost is mandatory. Mandatory being Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. They're not touching any of that stuff. And then there's interest, which is another more than $500 billion. They're not touching that. You're basically left with $2 trillion after that. Roughly half of it is defense, which I'm sure there can be money saved here and there with new technologies. Like, for example, $500 drones can take out multi-million-dollar fighter jets these days. There's for sure money to be saved there, but not sure how much. The real slice of the budget that the cuts are going to come from is the discretionary non-defense part of the budget, and that's only roughly $1 trillion a year. So I'm pointing this out because I don't know how big like the actual financial impact will be. I don't know if this is the solution to our country's serious and getting more serious deficit and debt problems. It's more of a solution to the innovation problems, in my opinion.
Absolutely. You know, I often think about Ireland, I think, has one of the largest budget surpluses in the world of any government, and has done for the past couple of years. And America, of course, is one of the largest deficit spenders. I used to think the government should run its budget like a household. I'm kind of less sympathetic to that view now. I certainly would like the government to spend money more efficiently. There's so many examples of the government kickstarting big projects like the Manhattan Project, or going to the moon, or giving the initial funding for semiconductors. So many examples, right? Yeah. And we want more of that. So I'm not necessarily against government spending. But what I would say is Elon is only one man. I know there are plenty of other really smart builders who understand the pain that bureaucracy and regulation cause, that are putting themselves forward for public service here. But even if you get a superstar team of a dozen entrepreneurs, you only have so much time. The thing they need to focus on is somehow scaling back the regulations. I wouldn't even worry about the spending.
Yeah, that's such a good point, that government spending money has resulted in some serious breakthrough innovations. The most recent example is the government did research on the Gila monster, right? That its venom ultimately is what allowed us to discover semaglutide, which is what's in Ozempic. So, sure, scientists, take $10 million and study this weird thing that might not result in anything, but might push forward innovation. But it's the stuff around that. It's the progress stopping bureaucracy, which we're staunchly against.
Yeah, on that point, two things that, again, Elon, if you're watching, here's what you should do. You should first of all set ambitious concrete goals. So you think about JFK, we're going to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade. It was a concrete goal. It was kind of, it came with a time as well. So why not get every government agency to pick a goal and a deadline. And the deadline should be America's 250th birthday in 2026. So whether that's the NRC approving 10 new nuclear reactor designs, or NASA putting humans on Mars, or helping SpaceX put humans on Mars, whatever, that's what we should do. That's what we need to do. Instead of just this endless... And I will actually point out, I believe the Department of Government Efficiency has a set date to wind down. So that kind of...
It's exactly what you said. It's July 4th, 2026, which is America's 250th birthday.
There you go.
Let's talk about NEPA a little bit, the environmental laws. You've written that if you're president for a day and you could make one change to existing laws, it would be to delete NEPA.
So, NEPA was passed in the 1970s, and essentially it's made building physical infrastructure in America, whether it's housing, whether it's roads, bridges, all these type of things, nearly impossible. So the average NEPA review now takes 4.5 years. Just to put that into context, we built the Golden Gate Bridge, we built the Empire State Building, Walt Disney built Disneyland, we built the Pentagon, all faster than it now takes to complete an environmental impact statement under NEPA. And NEPA only applies to federal projects, but you have all these baby NEPAs, state, local regulations, environmental laws that do essentially the same thing as NEPA. So this ends up turning even the slightest little project into this decade-long boondoggle. And if you remove NEPA, that's like the one thing that if you have to use all your political capital to do, I think that's the best use of your time.
You know what I would love to see? There's not much of a chance of this happening, but one of the problems is that laws only accumulate. So we showed the Federal Register to start the program, just laws on top of laws on top of laws, and they never go away. And if you just let that continue forever, eventually almost everything is going to be illegal. Here's a crazy proposal, Elon. Some subset of regulations should come with an expiration date. Every 5 years, every 10 years, it's got to be looked at, repassed by Congress. If it's not, it goes away. I think that would make a world of difference.
100%. I believe Elon has a principle of delete, 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 which is essentially he'll look at a process like, hey, this is how we design a rocket. And he'll look at all the laws and or all the rules, all the steps. And if someone cannot come in, and if the person who designed that rule can't come in and explain to him why they did it, they delete the rule. And that would certainly be amazing to have that in the government.
You want to talk about crypto now?
I first of all want to talk about my plan, what they should actually do, and how to speed up innovation. So you ready?
Yeah.
All right. So again, very politically charged topic, COVID and COVID vaccines. We are not here to debate that. I think it was really bad how the government shoved COVID vaccines down our throat and told us we couldn't fly if we didn't get boosters. But the amazing thing, the thing that we should all champion is during COVID, we launched something called Operation Warp Speed. Okay. And it was essentially, hey, this virus is really bad. We are going to temporarily remove all the bureaucratic regulations in order to get a vaccine out in the fastest time possible. So actually, due to mRNA technology, we had the vaccine designed in 48 hours. It took another 11 months through trials and testing to get the jab in people's arms, which was still a record by over 3 years. And for perspective, it usually takes 10 years to develop a new vaccine. So what we did in 11 months, it usually takes 10 years. We should launch Operation Warp Speed for everything. We should launch Operation Warp Speed for nuclear, for solar, for critical infrastructure, for life-saving drugs. I mean, if we did it for a virus, why not do it for this regulatory state that's holding us back? So, you know, it's kind of an easy way around. We're talking about how hard it is to fire government employees and disband three-letter agencies. This is kind of the I-95 Pennsylvania Shapiro playbook, but for everything. You exempt things from NEPA and you do all those things. So I think that would be a way to get some quick wins under our belt.
Would you go on like a topic by topic basis and just slash the regulations around each topic?
You have to. So I'll give you one very good example. So you should exempt every nuclear and solar every new nuclear and solar project from the shackles of NEPA. So we actually already basically done this. So earlier this summer, Congress passed a law that said, hey, we want chip factories to be built in America. Let's exempt them from NEPA. Another thing that Operation Warp Speed got right is that usually when you're developing life-saving drugs, you have to do phase 1 trials, and then we review the data. Phase 2 trials, review the data. Phase 3 trials, review the data. During Operation Warp Speed, you say, hey, we're going to get this thing out as fast as possible. Let's do the trials in parallel. And that sped up. That took years off the time it takes to develop a vaccine. So COVID killed 1.2 million Americans. Cancer kills that many Americans every 2 years. Let's declare war on the bureaucratic delays in cancer research. And there's all these other example. Another thing that Pennsylvania did correctly, man, your home state is just hitting it out of the park with the fracking and the I-95 rebuilds. But it recently passed a law that said, hey, if this agency doesn't process an application within a certain period of time, you have to refund the fees. So we need to put obstructionist agencies like the NRC and the FDA on a shot clock. Okay? Approve within 6 months or a year or refund the fees.
I love it. One thing I worry about with this is the concept of the seen and unseen. So regulations prevent, some regulations actually do prevent disasters. So when you hear deregulation, people think 2008. And they think if you hadn't deregulated, 2008 financial crisis wouldn't have happened. It's like a concrete thing that happened that people can point to and worry about. Same thing like a nuclear meltdown, 3 Mile Island. It didn't actually harm anybody, but it still, people had to move away and it was disruptive. Like it's a concrete thing that happened that people can use to argue for regulation. Whereas the other side of the argument is like stuff we didn't get because we had regulations, lives that didn't get saved because we had these regulations. It's like, it's hard to visualize that, and therefore it can be hard to make the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even something as concrete as we don't have supersonic jets because the FAA banned them in the early 70s. It's kind of like abstract. No one alive really remembers it. I know our friend from the American Enterprise Institute, James Petrakouskis, did a study, I believe, and it was essentially the overburdensome regulations costing the American economy $11 trillion per year. And it worked out to something like, I'm not sure if it was that study or a previous study, it was like $15,000 for every American family. But yes, I agree. You're very right, and that's part of our goal. It's part of our goal to kind of make it concrete for the average people, to why this is holding us back.
One of the things that makes me so rationally optimistic is, despite all of this regulatory suppression, America is still the fastest growing, most dynamic, most innovative large country in the world. Like, can we give a round of applause to the entrepreneurs, who have still made all this great stuff happen despite facing this opposition? So imagine what's possible once it lifts.
The technology isn't holding us back. The money isn't holding us back. The only thing holding us back is us. And you're right. I think one of the things that makes me most bullish on America is that I kind of had an idea that the innovators and the entrepreneurs, the political situation got so dire that they just kind of stepped back and said, just leave me alone. It was actually the complete opposite. So, Peter Thiel, as far back as 2016, started backing Trump. Elon backed Trump this time. I know other prominent figures like Elon Musk and Naval Ravikant and stuff Mark Andreessen and Naval Ravikant have come out and kind of said, enough is enough. We actually need to get involved in politics because it's become such a blocker to innovation. So it's going to be difficult, but I believe that, and I'm hopeful that we can make significant progress over the next 4 years on taking off the regulatory straitjacket.
It does feel like the people who just wanted to be left alone got involved this political cycle for the first time, and that might have been the difference maker. But you talked about blocking innovation. That's the perfect segue to crypto.
Yeah, I mean, look, as people might know, if you had to pick one area of innovation that's kind of been under the regulatory onslaught over the past 4 years, it's kind of the crypto blockchain space. Crypto founders were getting debanked due to kind of a quirk in securities laws in America. The SEC was not giving clear guidance on which crypto projects were securities or commodities, and essentially opened all crypto founders up to lawsuits. Many dozens did get sued. Many were brought to court. Thankfully, crypto won a lot of those cases, but still, the damage was done. If you're a startup and the federal government tries to sue you, it's a one-way street. You don't even have the resources to fight them in court. So yeah, I mean, let's talk more about it.
So one of the things you've pointed out in your research around crypto is that tokenomics are what you actually get when you buy a given crypto. So if you compare it to a stock, compare it to an equity, you get a slice of the future profits of the company, if there are any. If it's a bond, it's a promise to pay you interest and principal, and if you don't get paid, you have a pretty senior claim on the company's assets. Crypto it's a wide open frontier. All different cryptos entitle you to all different things. And the regulations that were in place made it so that any kind of entitlement to any kind of real benefit was effectively illegal. Do I basically have that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, people listening might be kind of wondering, hey, I've been hearing about this crypto thing for 15 years. Where are all the use cases? Why am I not using crypto in my life? And the answer is that for at least the past 4 years, launching a useful product, or as you say, launching a token with any value has essentially been illegal. So that's why you see all these memes, all these tokens that are just completely worthless and kind of scams, for want of a better term. And yet the founders and the innovators trying to build real stuff, you couldn't even try to innovate in crypto without calling up your lawyer first. And your lawyer is going to tell you, hey, unless you want to knock on your or subpoena in 6 months, don't do this. It's just not worth it. So, I'd go to these conferences and I'd talk to founders, and they would tell me, I'd love to build this product, to have this great idea, but it's just not worth the government coming after me. I know many left America as a result. So the good news is that that's all changing now. So President Trump has been extremely supportive of crypto. And really the problem here is that the current leadership in the Securities and Exchange Commission, those guys have been the problem. They've been extremely hostile to crypto. Again, we are not anti-regulation. We are for regulation. And the problem in crypto is that it has been you have a lack of regulatory clarity. You don't have clear rules around which are securities, which are commodities, what innovations can you accomplish, which can you not touch. And now we finally can see light at the end of the tunnel, and I think we're going to get regulatory clarity sometime in the next 6 months.
So roughly speaking, what's the timeline on that? I know a lot of the dominoes already fell, like Sherrod Brown, the guy who, above anyone else, probably the most responsible for Operation Choke Point 2.0, which was the concerted effort to essentially choke out crypto from the financial system. He lost his seat. What else has already happened, and what else needs to happen for crypto to truly flourish? And not just prices. Crypto prices are already flourishing. Bitcoin's at 91K as we talk, but like the actual real businesses that underlie the best cryptos, what has to happen for them to flourish?
There's so much going on that I completely forgot about Operation Choke Point 2.0. It's just the onslaught. It's like been a three-headed hydra or something like that. It's just been so insane. What has to happen is, so a bill called the FIT 21 bill, made its way, it passed in the House. It was a bipartisan bill that passed in the House of Representatives last Congress. Obviously, everything kind of shut down then for the election. But now that the Republicans control the three branches of government, the bill has to be reintroduced. And you would believe that the bill will now pass the Senate and be signed by the president. So that bill really gives us 90% of what the crypto industry wants. It gives clarity around which tokens are securities and which are commodities, and all these type of things. So that's really the one to look out for. You also want to look out for stablecoin legislation, and another few things. But yeah, that's the big one that has to happen still.
All right, December 2026. What's the price of Bitcoin?
I don't know. I mean, I think it probably gets to 150K relatively soon, but then you can have a correction. But yeah, the thing is that the regulatory shackles have come off crypto. That's the big thing that's going on here. For the first time in years, innovators can actually build real products. So what I'm really excited for is for this technology to show what it can accomplish, because there's a lot of interesting things going on. And yet you've been under the thumb of regulators for so long.
All right, exciting times. I'm sure we'll be talking about this topic a lot more. Viewers, you can boost our optimism by hitting the subscribe button, ringing that bell, and leaving us a comment. This greatly helps our channel grow. We appreciate all of your support, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Nat.